Which local stocks are favoured by the overseas investors? Well, of course, last week it was Naspers right at the end of the week because the share price went up by 9%. But what else, including that one? In the studio with me now is Avien Pillay from Old Mutual Wealth. Avien, there are so many stocks that local fund managers tell me no, they're far too expensive, but the overseas chaps come in and buy them willy-nilly. They just keep driving them up.
Well, if we look at the flows over the last 2 weeks, the stocks that were on the top of investors' lists were Naspers, Aspen, Sanlam and MTN, and these stocks recorded the biggest inflows into the market over the last 2 to 3 weeks.
I wonder if they're right or not, David. I mean, if you were an overseas investor, for example, would you be buying these things at these lofty elevations?
Probably Aspen and Naspers. Sanlam maybe, but some of the retailers, you know, if you looked at Mr. Price today, they actually said that 54% of their investors now are foreign. So, Avien, there's been huge inflows into the retailers, you know, which I hold responsible for some of these lofty prices. Do you see this continuing? Are you monitoring these as well?
I believe that as long as we produce the good results, these retailers will continue to outperform. If we look at Mr. Price has consistently outperformed the market over the last 10 years plus. And we also need to understand that foreigners are comparing these top South African retailers to the best global retailers. So they're not merely looking at Mr. Price relative to other retailers in South Africa. They're looking at Mr. Price relative to Inditex, the Spanish listed company, so it's not merely being compared to the South African retailers.
Avien, it's Nozipho in Johannesburg. In your newsletter, you also make mention of the fact that international investors are liking the idea of this cashless trend that we're seeing in emerging markets. Maybe let's talk about not maybe so much of an emerging market, maybe a frontier market, Nigeria, that has really gone strongly in terms of a policy perspective to try and move to a cashless society. To what extent would a market like Nigeria, the opportunities for cashless societies in Nigeria, be a big impetus for an international investor?
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the major credit card companies, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, they've all been rolling out extensively in Africa. So, and it's also in some of the other emerging markets. So we've seen quite a big move to the cashless market over the last couple of years.
Do you think that some of the stocks that we've seen up on the screen now, Avien, are up there because South Africa is a small part of their portfolio? We've been talking earlier on about how small the market that we talk about every day is, and therefore if someone pushes a button in Frankfurt or London or New York, then it disproportionately pushes the stock. Is that the case with a share like Aspen, for example? Is there a case for it listing elsewhere on another market to make it more liquid?
I think that'll address the liquidity problem, but in terms of the price action, I think it'll be similar. So whether Aspen's listed in South Africa and in UK, I think you'll still have a lot of money chasing a few good stocks. So
and these are good stocks, aren't they?
They are.
Whether
good
you
stocks.
say that a PE shouldn't be where it is, that these are good stocks. Is there anything that sort of worries you about these, again, about the price-earnings ratios?
No, I think you know the issue that a lot of these companies face is that the growth starts to slow down, then we will see these stocks being derated. So I think as long as they can continue to grow their franchise, they will see their price appreciate.
Yeah, I think as long as the momentum is with these stocks and as long as they keep on doing what they do, then long may their success continue. Avien, thanks very much for your brief time this evening. That was Avien Pillay from Old Mutual Wealth.